This is the second video in our new series on the Ubiquity Role-Playing System. This one is combat. Combat itself uses die pools, as discussed in the Ubiquity review earlier this year on the channel. I'm going to be using Ubiquity dice. I'm not going to be, doing and redoing all the examples again and again with standard dice and Ubiquity dice. You can use any kind of die that you want as long as it's even-sided. If you're curious about the differences with the dice, let me say one more time that the number that appears on a Ubiquity die is the number of successes you would have gotten if you had rolled a certain number of standard dice. So the white dice emulate rolling a single even-sided die. The reds are the value of 2 dice, and the blues are the value of 3 dice. So if you look at this row of red dice, that's 2, 4, 6 dice. So I'm rolling half the dice I would need. The blue dice represents 9 standard dice. So you can see how it makes rolling larger die pools a lot easier and makes reading them a lot faster. So for example, I just have to add 3, 2, and 1 together to get the total number of successes I would have gotten, rather than picking and choosing my way through a cluster of 9 dice. For a sample character, let's take a look at the Scarred Veteran, seen posing here with the gaping mouth of a giant cannon. And for combat, what we really need to pay attention to is not this whole wide range of traits, but we need to look at the defense score. So he has a defense of 6. As combat in Ubiquity is an opposed roll, the person playing our Scarred Veteran will be using as his base pool 6 dice. On the attacking side, well, what are they attacking with? You'll notice that there's a brawl skill, there's a firearm skill, there's a gunnery skill, and there's melee. Now, All for One also includes a fencing skill, and I'm going to get into that in a later clip. If our Scarred Veteran were attacking with the rapier, already written out on his sheet would be the fact that the damage of the rapier by itself is 2 lethal. And he has 9 attack dice, for an average of 4+. So the only thing that I really have to care about from a mechanical point of view of how do I do this is I need to gather together 9 dice. And I know that when I roll them, I'll be getting 4 or 5 successes on average. As I explained in the review, one of the features of Ubiquity is being able to take the average. This doesn't really apply in combat unless you're the Game Master. Freeing up the Game Master from the duty of rolling dice for everything really speeds up play, and providing the averages right in the stat block makes it fair. They're not just deciding on a whim if you succeed or not. You're actually facing off against what this character can typically do. Now, as a Game Master, and I know quite a few other Ubiquity Game Masters, we like to roll anyway, especially in a tense situation. It makes it more interesting for us, and it makes it more interesting for the player. But when you're new to the system, being able to just look and see how many successes you can expect to get from a typical roll, it just keeps things moving smoothly. Also, it helps players make decisions. Do I want to spend some of my style points to represent investing myself more emotionally, more convincingly, more energetically in this attack? Do I think that their defense is better than my ability to attack? Do I need to really exert myself here? That average helps them figure that out. So, to recap, if defending, I look at my defense score. If attacking, I look at the attack score for the weapon I've chosen. That's it. So let's say that 2 Scarred Veterans were going against each other. So this represents the defense pool of one, and this represents the attack pool of the other. To keep this example as simple as possible, let's just say it's a typical encounter. No additional modifiers apply. So the defending character would roll these, the attacking character would roll these, they'd do it at the same time, they'd compare the number of successes. So let's actually do that. So the defender gets 3 successes, the attacker gets 5 successes. Okay? So to keep it visually simple, this is how much damage I inflict. There's no soak. This is the amount of damage that I will inflict on this encounter. Now it's up to us to narrate how that looks or what this damage represents. The only thing that can interfere with this application of damage at this time now is whether or not the recipient of the injury chooses to spend style points to obviate the damage. All characters and creatures can be reduced to -5 before death. There are 3 damage types: caustic, which is difficult to heal and deal with, lethal, and non-lethal. As you might expect, non-lethal converts to lethal if you are taken down to -5 that way. Either way, hitting 0 represents the state where you can no longer function. If you make a willpower roll to remain on your feet, you can only take 1 of your 3 action types. If you fail, you fall unconscious. If you succeed, you'll have to keep making this roll every time you take damage. These simple mechanics are the underpinning for how you narrate and model your combat. It's very easy in Ubiquity to model a fight that does not go to the death, but does include defeating the other character in a satisfying way. In fact, it makes it so that you're more likely to defeat them than murder them, and makes murder an actual choice. Of course, being pulp-themed games for the most part, there are also mook rules, which take opponents out when they get to 0 health levels rather than having to reduce them all the way down to -5. How do you build a defense rating? That's built when you make your character and get your equipment. So it will change based on armor from time to time, but basically your defense rating stays constant. Your attack rating, as I mentioned earlier, is based on your weapon. It's based on your rating with that weapon plus the damage rating of that weapon. So the rapier we saw had a rating of 2, and the scarred veteran has a melee rating of 7, giving him 9 dice to use in an attack. That 1 roll represents his ability to hit and do damage. Any additional modifiers in combat simply come from what's going on around, what the environment is. In the years that I've been running Ubiquity games, pretty much the only thing which has ever caused trouble comprehending anything has come up in the multiple actions rules. And it's not that they're difficult to understand, it's just that as printed, the concepts kind of blend together. The section of the combat rules that covers attacking more than once or attacking with multiple weapons is in the total attack subsection in combat. And basically what it talks about is foregoing some of your defense in order to increase your ability to attack, which is a nice option to further model the idea of throwing yourself more completely into the attack. So by foregoing an attack action, you gain defense dice. By foregoing a defense action, you gain offensive dice. By choosing to attack using a weapon in each hand, you lose dice depending on your primary hand and secondary hand, obviously. If you want to attack the same target rapidly in succession, you'll take a penalty. And there are, of course, talents which offset these things that make it easier for your character to use 2 weapons, or easier for you to do a flurry, or easier to do rapid fire and enhance your defense or enhance your offense and that sort of thing. It becomes very intuitive, and after just a few hours running Ubiquity, you begin to be able to predict what the penalties are, and then, of course, just simply remember them. So, in practice, you would find that this character with his single gun, or this character with her dual gun belts, or this character with his unarmed attacks, and so probably wanting to do multiple punches or series of kicks, or this character with his single sword, or this character with rapier and main gauche. Nobody is more difficult to run than anybody else. No one's introducing complications. It's just the way that the pool is built. And the more things that you're trying to do, the fewer dice that you're rolling.